So what do we got? So what do we got, right? So remember, we have 10 positions we're looking through, right? P1 through P10. So P1 through P10. He's a 40 meter per second player. He's got a low point goal of 5 inches to 6 inches ahead, right? Because a little bit more high speed player. AOA of -6, -7. Also, we could probably add a dynamic loft, right? So dynamic loft, and this is for 7-iron. Because remember, we're shifting this player's low point in the AOA, so low point more behind, AOA a little bit more shallow. That means trajectory is going to be higher. So if he likes the trajectory he's currently hitting, let's say before he was delivering maybe 29 degrees of dynamic loft, now we're probably going to have to get him down to maybe like 26, 25 range at least, right? So let's say we have a dynamic loft goal of 25 degrees. Okay, so P1 through P10. Let's go step by step. Ideally, you'd have a down the line and face on. Right now, we just got face or down the line. Anything that's set up that shows you that he can, anything that's set up that'll help him get towards these goals. Is there anything? P1 through P10, right? We're on P1 to start. This is kind of how you can go through it. So when you're looking at the swing, anything you see it set up that's going to help him change those numbers.
I would say the most effect is his numbers at the position 5.
Yeah, and I agree, remember? And that's why we say that setup, well, for the better players, setup is a stronger correlator, right? In terms of changing the numbers, for sure. But, and Tomo is a better player. But for his setup, everything looks very good. So I agree with you. So, but P5 is definitely a position we want to change. So basically right here, we're going to come down and we're going to talk about the major ones we're changing. So far you said P5. So inside P5, let's go through and talk me through some things, because there's another position that I might do as well, but I'm not going to tell you. We're going to see what you say first. So what do you see wrong with P5 that's causing him to not get these numbers?
Okay, so firstly, so his
hand positioning.
Yeah,
okay.
It's too much forward.
So his hand positioning, the middle of the hands is pretty much about 3 inches outside the toe line, right? So his hand path is worked too far out, right? So I'm going to say hand path too far out, hand path too out. Okay. What else? Is that pretty much it? Or what else would cause him to get steep? Right. So basically, what we're learning right now are what are the swing mechanics that cause steepness. Right? So that's what we're trying to get rid of. Get rid of steeps. So hand path is too far out. That's one of them.
Also, club head.
You're at P6 now, though. It's okay though. I know what you're doing. So you're
other side.
That's at P6, but yeah, I agree with you. So that would be another position. So now you're going into P6, right? So club head out.
Also, can I jump to the position for people?
Oh, now he's going where I would start. So now he's at P4. Okay. What's wrong with P4?
Its hand position is pretty high.
Pretty high with no depth, right? So he's up here at the top of P4, right? So there you go. So now I think now you're starting to get into the first position that's really giving him a hard time, right? So P4, so we're gonna say lead arm is too high. Arm too high. Okay. And I think that P4, for him personally, lead arm getting too high is really leading to the hand path too out and then club head out.
Yeah, I should have said P4 first.
There you go. You're learning though. Okay. So lead arm too high, hand path too out, club head out, right? Also, you could add on a P5, he has a little bit, he's getting basically the lead shoulder maybe a little bit low. He's getting maybe a little bit excessive left pelvic tilt. And then he's also getting, obviously, the pelvic line really open, which all those are causing club heads to shift outwards, as well as getting low point way ahead, right? As well as the AOA steep, not where our goal is. Now, lead arm too high, what's causing him? So this would be, remember how we targeted in this specific lesson that we did the lead arm first, right? So I think really what's causing him to get that lead arm too high is from position 2 to position 3. Remember how he's getting that arm a little bit too far in? I call it abduction, right? He's getting a little bit too much this motion with his lead arm at position 3, and then his arm would raise up. So he kind of come in this way, and then raise up the arm, and then he'd get out and across, right? So that's why we were trying to get that lead arm a little bit less in, a little bit less abduction. So I would have probably started for him pretty much after P2, right? Getting that arm. And depending on the player, sometimes even though you're trying to change P3, you might even not even tell him that. You just get him into a different position 4 where the stopping goes. And that most of the time is going to clear up position 3 without you telling him. Because that's like a trick of the trade, right? You're trying to, even though you see kind of all these positions wrong, you're trying to basically target ultimately the strongest correlator position, so you don't have to tell them about all this other stuff, and it kind of just naturally starts happening, right? Because the less you can tell them, especially for a better player, the more likely they're able to do it on the course, which will make them really happy. So that's super important there.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you can see how structured the lesson has from the start, right? So you got your formal greeting, konnichiwa, blah, blah, blah. You got your warm-up. You've asked the right questions to where you can set them up to finding out the visual aspect that they have along with their swing, as well as really the ball flight miss, which is going to keep them coming because they're getting a lot better. So that's good. And then from there, we collected the data. We learned how to collect the data, 5 to 7 shots, right? Driver, iron, face-on, down-the-line videos, correct. And then we learned how to analyze it, right? So we analyze the ball flight loss side first, so they can have an understanding of what they want to do here. And then we figure out and we show them which swing mechanics are going to ultimately affect these numbers. And that's pretty much the introduction of the lesson, right? So now the lesson is going to start beginning.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let me know when you're good.
Right.
Okay. So this is going to go away. Now we're going to move on to the implementation process, which Shintaro did a little bit. I'll give you credit. You definitely did a little bit of the implementation process, but it could have been much better, right? So let's call this the implementation process. All right. So really, this is kind of the basics, right? There's the 2-part stop and go. All right, I'm just going to do 1-part stop and go, and I'm going to draw a little line here because I don't want to write too much. Then there's the 50% speed no stop, right?
Yep.
And then there's 4. This is going to be the 100% speed no stop. Okay, so really in these positions, and let's start with the 2-part stop and go. The first thing with the 2-part stop and go is it's just 2 positions that you're stopping at, right? So it doesn't, you know how the backswing we typically do takeaway and then top of swing? We recommend that for when you're trying to do a top of swing position change. I think that's the easiest way. It doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You could technically stop at P3 and go to P4. Or you could even stop in the in-between positions, right? P1.5, P2.5, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how you utilize this 2-part stop and go. Any kind of questions on that one?
Not all of it. Yes.
And then so with the 2-part stop and go, really I'm going to be continuing to do the 2-part stop and go until I can see the student have 3 to 4 swings in a row to where they're hitting the position that we want or the positions that we want successfully, right? So once I can see that they're continuing to do that 3 to 4 times in a row, then we're going to move into the 1-part stop and go, okay? And then once you do the 1-part stop and go, same thing. You want to be able to see them do it 2 to 3, 4 times in a row, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in these 2 categories, somewhere in this little process in the lesson, you know this very well, right? Breaking point.
Yes.
All right, so what's the breaking point?
most of the students, like 50%.
Yeah, that's where most of the students are. But what is the breaking point? Breaking point is what?
Breaking point is cannot do it.
The speed, correct. Yeah, the swing breaks down, right? So typically, yeah, like you said, 2-part stop and goes, they can usually do the motion pretty well. 1 part, 50% speed. Okay, so here's what, basically the breaking point, how do we break that breaking point, correct? So you can break the breaking point by taking these 4 steps and just adding layers to them, right? So for example, if you did the 1-part stop and go, you could do a 1-part stop and go where they hold it for 3 seconds. You could do a 1-part stop and go where they hold it for 2 seconds. A 1-part stop and go where they hold it for 1 second, right? And you're slowly getting them out. You can also have a 1-part stop and go at 25% speed. 1-part stop and go on half speed. You know what I mean? And you can kind of break it up. And the good thing with TrackMan is you can measure their speeds, because the biggest issue we see when players go to 50% speed, they're doing it at 95% speed, right? Yeah, so they don't know how to judge their speed. So TrackMan is really useful because you can show, be like, hey, you know, your 7-iron was Sanju go 35 meters per second. You just swung at 33, right? That's not half speed. And then they'll understand, and then they can drop it down, and then they become a lot more successful. So then, so just put layers in between these, and you can do as many layers as you want while you're going through the lesson. That would be super useful. Getting them past the breaking point. Okay, so now from there, basically, once you get past this implementation process, you're pretty much going to be done with whatever motion that you suggested, right? So let's backtrack just a second and then talk about kind of the, are you familiar with when I talk about the macro and micro?
Yeah.
Macro / micro moves?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, you're going to obviously have the implementation process in part for probably, you're typically going to be having one macro position, which for Toma's example was the lead arm height. Or actually, position 4 is the macro position, and then the micro position was the lead arm height, as well as depth, right? So he was a little bit this way in front of the arm, or in front of the head, and we were trying to get him a little bit more lower with the lead arm height, and then show a little bit more depth. So macro and micro. Okay, cool. And then after you do that, one of these positions is where you're going to find them pretty much stuck on, and you're going to basically spend most of the lesson on. And then what you're hoping to do basically is being able to show the visual differences, right? That's the before and after. So let's say you do this, this is probably going to take up about 30 to 35, 40 minutes per each section, right? So if you're doing that 1-hour iron section at the beginning of the lesson, this is probably going to take up 30, 40 minutes at the time, right? And then that's, during this time, just like we said, you're constantly showing the swing, constantly showing the swing. And then what I like to do is every about 10 minutes to 12 minutes, the students forgets what their old swing looked like, and they start getting discouraged. So once I feel them start getting discouraged, I show them what the old swing looks like compared to what we're doing, so they can, you know, refamiliarize themselves from where they came from. And that's going to give them the, basically the spark to keep going in the lesson. So that's super important. I would do that for sure.
Yeah.
Shut up, Siri. That's the macro implementation process. Good. And then you got your final presentation, pretty much right around 50-minute mark. You're doing your final presentations of showing the before and afters, and then hopefully you're also showing how the numbers changed a little bit as well. Or at least they're starting to change, right? If they haven't changed completely, it's not a big deal. As long as you set the structure up at the beginning of the lesson to where they know exactly the goals and they can see some progress, you did a pretty good lesson, and they're going to obviously most of the time come back. And that's pretty much it. And the driver obviously is the same steps, except for you're going to have different smash factor numbers, low point numbers, etc. Do you want to go over that, or you? You good? Okay. And if you do need to go over it in the future, we're going to have hopefully these meetings monthly.
Yeah, sure.
So we need that a little bit more. But let's go. So now, pretty much in terms of the swing mechanics side and the lesson structure side, that's pretty much it. the outro of the lesson is pretty straightforward, right? The roundup. So what I like to do for the little wrap up here, and I'm going to erase this, is I just like to write down basically the notes, show them re-show them the goals. So if you're using the whiteboard like I want you to, you're just going to go through and write down the goals again, and then write where they currently are, and then write where they were before, and kind of just show the process as well as with the video and show them.
Do they have a whiteboard in Canada?
Yeah.
I
know you didn't use it. I watched your lesson. It's sitting there. I was like, when's he going to use the whiteboard? And then I was like, when's he going to use the high-speed camera? That's like $100,000. When is he? Yeah. So right when you this is kind of the TrackMan here. There's the little laptop. The whiteboard is off to the side by the golf bag. And they have a bunch of new markers, and they have a new eraser because I got one. Yeah. It's all there, ready to go.
Okay, it's good.
Yeah. So, and then the outro, the only thing I would really do is just make sure to write it all down. So if you can write it down for the student and show them kind of a little progression, it's nice. Yeah. And that's that for teaching side.
Definitely,